There, I can't do the music.
Hey, Mr. Pond
there it is.
Tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Luss, the Pond Boss. You're not going to believe who I'm hanging with and where we're hanging out. Look here, Ron Ardoin.
Dwayne, like Boudin.
Oh, man, I knew that's what it was.
Boudin, you had some Boudin just
Boudin. How good was that Boudin, man?
It was good.
How'd that Boudin get here? Christopher Aguillard. So he's right here on the other side of the table where you can't see him. And here's Chris Arthur. And your bride, this is y'all's date night tonight, but you're here live, and she's going to watch it on her phone. Look at there. There's Troy Todd, Ryan Triple. Good gosh. Let's see. There's Wyatt checking in. Hey, Wyatt, you know what? I'm going to fly to Denver Monday. I won't have a whole lot of time because I got to go meet a guy and pick up some equipment. Joe Dupner. Joe, good to see you. Brian Lee Baker, good to see you folks. You know what? I'm going to see if I can get this on my laptop like I always do. And Ron Ardoin. Boudin. Ardoin.
That's right.
Bob Lusk. Oh, no, wait. Lusk. Lusk Dan.
That's right.
Well, welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. You guys know how we like to start. Like to start off with hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like or heart. Somebody told me to click heart. Anybody know why? Out here, we got a little audience here.
They don't like it.
I don't either.
Love it.
Yeah, okay. So instead of liking it, they're going to love it. I like that. And then share this to your timeline, and you are eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. And Leanne's trying to find some mugs, so she said, look, until I find some mugs, let's do T-shirts. So, and she didn't do a drawing today, so I got a feeling she'll do it next week. And when that happens, then we will have a winner. So, we were just talking about what kind of topics we were going to have, and holy cow, look at all these comments coming up already. Yeah, Boudin. Yeah, Boudin balls, Boudin. We had crawfish bread. That recipe is going to make it into Pond Boss Magazine because your dad takes like a loaf of sourdough bread.
He never told me. The only time he's ever given it away was to you just now.
Whoa, and I videoed him. So the video is right here on this Facebook page, right underneath this.
I got it now.
Yeah, look at there. There's Clint Benbow from North Carolina. Get to see Clint from every night, once in a while. I've got a story about his dad I'll tell one of these days that was kind of fun. John Funk. The Great Lakes are 23.5% covered with ice. John, I know you're from mid-Michigan, but I probably would have said 25% just to round it up. Mike Cottrell, Palapinto County. Wow, you know what? After I figure out when I get there, I will ring you. I got to book a flight. There's Kim Moore checking in from Illinois. Justin Schenck from out there on the West Coast. He's got his bulldozer delivered today. First bulldozer.
Wow.
You're going to have to tell us that story, dude. Look at that. Billy Bates from Maryland. Good gosh, we got people from everywhere. There's Travis Smith, Doug Cusick, Frank James. Frank, I'm down in Lake Charles today, or Iowa. Wait, Iowa. Hold it. Holy cow. How do you pronounce your name? I'm in Iowa, Louisiana. Everybody else calls it Iowa, but I'm not there. Bill Russell checking in from Lower AL, Alabama. Leanne, going to expect some of those crawfish bread back there. I'm going to have to bring her some crawfish bread. You know what? I got the recipe. We're going to make it. I did get some good video footage of that. I put it on my Facebook page as well as the Pond Boss Facebook page. Zach McKenzie, James Allen from Kentucky. Kind of frigid over there. There's Danny Mack, Mark Hicks, Kirk McGlamry from Dripping Springs. It's his wife's fault he's a little bit late. You ain't that late. You're good. Look at that, Danny Mack. It's giving us a translation option on Hiya. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit. One of the things I think it'd be good to talk about is, first of all, we're at the Cabon. I keep calling it Cabon, but it's Cabon, and it's Ron Ardoin, not Ron Ardoin. So, and we're in Iowa. Is that right?
That's right. Le Bleu Settlement, actually.
Le Bleu Settlement.
Right.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, that's what happens when you bring a Texican to Louisiana, you know. And hanging with Chris Arthur, and your wife is Mandy. And I'm hoping Mandy's watching, because this is usually their Wednesday night date, which I think is so fun. Look at there, Blair. Oh, there's Wayne. Wayne and Josie, they're going to have their way. You know, I just found out about Christopher Arthur and his wife, Mandy. They do their Wednesday night date nights watching this stuff, too. So I'm glad everybody's here. Ron got a call the other day from a client whose pond is seeping. And how big is that pond, do you think?
Quarter acre. Not too big, but it's
Okay.
a quarter of acre.
About a quarter of an acre. And what the bulldozer guy told him when he dug it was he was going to tap into the water table, and the water table would keep it full. So I thought we'd start off talking about the water table and get some kind of an idea as to how that really works. So let's hear your thoughts about what you saw and what you're telling him. And as you have questions, bring those questions and we'll talk about them.
So I never went to the pond. I've never seen the pond, personally.
Oh, okay.
He sent me pictures. We just discussed it through text and over the phone. But down here, we haven't had rain in 2 months, two and a half months. Not good rain.
And when you get it, it all comes at once.
It does. But his pond, he said he's never been able to hold water. So I started asking him a few questions. And when I got down to how deep is the pond, and when he said 20 feet, I don't know this for sure. It could be seeping from the sides. But he's tried Dammit, which is a shellac type of something, sealant.
Yep.
I'm not familiar with it. He's tried bentonite. It's still not holding. And he's put this stuff on the edges and just in random spots. So maybe he's not hitting the right spot. But my first thought was, and he told me, he said they hit water, and when they hit water, they kept digging. And I think
that's a big red flag, huh?
I think he's on top of a water table that's not full, and it's just it's fluctuating, and it's
Okay,
it's
so
going to cause him problems.
So the way the water table works is typically there's not upward pressure on that. It's usually like an underwater seam or an underwater sand where the water rises only to a certain level, and that's it. And then it rises and falls with some influence, typically a nearby river or other water body is what influences the water table. So the water table can rise and fall, so it's not so much that the pond is leaking water out, it's the fact that it's leaking totally because he went 20 feet in South Louisiana. So it would have, with the amount of rainfall that you guys get, you don't need more than 5, 6, 7, 8 acres of runoff to service 1 acre of pond. So when you go down 20 feet and you cut through all those layers of, and I don't know what you guys call your clay here, but up a little farther north, they call it buckshot clay, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's real dense clay, but once you cut through it and you hit a layer of sand or even some gravel from around here, I can't remember what you called it, but I'm not going to say it. When I'm looking at Christopher Aguillard now, who's over there eating some of that boudin he brought. When you cut through a certain layer, you get to some yellow, slick, slimy. Stop before you get there, right?
Yep. You want
So,
just before there.
so one of the misconceptions about a water table is that it's going to automatically have enough back pressure to fill a pond. It's not. So if you're going to be dealing with a water table, just hope that it's about 3 feet from the surface, like it is. And you're hanging out with Chris Arthur as well. He moved from up around the Texas Panhandle and up north of Pampa, from where he moved from down here to South Louisiana. That's the way they dig ponds there, because that water table is not but 3 or 4 feet under the surface, and it's all sandy soil along the Canadian River up there, right? Yep, that's right. Okay, look at there. There's Gary and Liz are checking in. The Novotnys, who were at the last Institute of Higher Pondology.
How y'all doing?
Yeah, we got to hang out with them. Billy Bates likes that background. You like that the Cabon
My wife
sign?
got that for me for Christmas.
That was your Christmas
Yep,
present.
it's one of
Oh
them.
my gosh. I'd kind of like to have something
Pretty
like
cool.
that one of these days. I'll tell my wife. Mark Hicks wants to know, will black salties survive and breed in central North Carolina, or do they need brackish water? They do not need brackish water. Black salties are goldfish that are bred for that color. So they've kind of got a blackish hue, color to them. And they were bred by Anderson Minnow Farms and then marketed as fish bait because they'll live a little while in brackish water. So actually, the guy that marketed those still is an outdoor writer that loves to fish the coast, and he bought into it and saw how well they worked. But to answer your question, yes, they will live and breed in central North Carolina. The problem is they won't all stay that color, and they can get to be 10 or 12 pounds apiece. So be real picky if you're going to choose to use a fish like that, because it's not necessarily going to be a good forage fish. There's Chico. We were just talking about Mike Garcia a while ago. We were talking about, I was asking these guys, why in the world do you guys watch this broadcast? And every one of them says, because I always get a little nugget or a tidbit of information that helps me manage my pond better. They're all nodding their heads right now.
It's free information.
Yeah.
It's free information.
Yeah, and so Mike's asking, Chico's asking, what's up? And so what's up is at some point when my wife, we have a pool table on its side in my office at Lusk Landing, 3. And when that gets out of my office, we're going to turn that into a studio, and we're going to start doing some more informational type podcasts that won't be live, where I'll stay on topic, which I like to stay on topic. But Frank James has got a question. There's David Schneiderman with Easy Docks of Texas. Look at that. Matt Marsden. He's in the artificial structure business. Harrison Davis checking in from Georgia.
I love Matt Marsden.
You like Matt Marsden?
I love that he's got a great product. Yep, I love it.
There's your testimony. What's it called?
American Fish Tree.
Okay, there's a free plug, Matt. Yep. We'll send the bill. I guess if it's free, you can't send the bill. All right, Frank James, do water table ponds have more moderate temperature swings in winter and summer than non-water table BOWs? Yes, they do. Because typically a water table is not static. It's typically moving. If it rises and falls, that means it's got some kind of movement to it. Because when it goes down, it's moving laterally. It's not just moving down. It's moving sideways because it's filling sand as the water's going down from whatever the original source is. So it does have more moderate temperature swings. Now, if you get into a water table like, I can't think of the, I got one of the Pond Boss moderators lives up in Minnesota. He's got a water table pond that's a gravel pit. And when they finished the gravel pit, the water was about 40 feet deep. And with a water table that it's not static, it goes up and down. But he'll get 18 to 24 inches of ice. But down under the ice, down toward the bottom of that water table, that water could be 55 degrees. So the surface freezes, but the bottom is pretty darn warm. Probably warm enough for those guys to swim in if they could get through the ice. There's Chuck Brinkman from checking in from out west of St. Louis, Missouri. Drew Bachman from South Carolina. Pond Boss rocks. That's cool. I like that. Kirk McGlamory. I don't even have a pond, but I pick up good info about bass that helps me to be a more effective fisherman. Speaking about bass, Chris Arthur was asking a while ago, when's the best time to stock bass? So he's got a new pond that has been infiltrated with bullheads and anything else?
Just shad.
Okay, what kind of shad?
Different. The moon eye shad.
Moon eye shad. Okay, because they don't get too huge.
Right.
So they stock some bluegill in it. The bluegill are growing and they've begun to reproduce. Fathead minnows, I guess, as well. So I don't know how well the fatheads are doing with the bullheads in there. But he's catching 5-gallon buckets of bullhead and running around with a dip net when the little schools of bullheads are coming up. Those mudcats are coming up in clumps. He's capturing those and throwing them out on the bank, feeding the raccoons. And so, and the egrets and the great blue herons and all that.
Drawing more predators.
They'll take that. So his question was me, should I stock the bass in March? My answer to that's going to be no. And my answer to that is going to be, since you've got a pond that's got some newness to it, you're going to want to use young of the year bass. Now, what I would do is those bass won't even be hatched probably until late March or April, depending on which fish farm they come from. So let those fish get to be 3 inches long or so, and then stock those, which that means it's going to take you into mid-June, and that's when I do it, because by that time your bluegill have spawned again. You've had more chances to get more bullheads out, and the shad are a non-issue, and you want 3-inch long bluegill at least so they can escape being eaten by the bullheads, believe it or not. Bullheads are predator fish. I have shocked up bullheads that have had bigger fish in their bellies, so yes. All right. So James Allen from Kentucky says, since you asked, we use state and local university help with our lake, but you take time to explain your advice and have a lots more and more varied experience. Pond Boss rocks. Oh boy, I thought that was going to be a question, but that's a compliment. So it's about the information. I like that. And, I think there's a little bit to it that it's personal and we get to see who's watching us and talk to them as well. Patrick Smith, the temp thing is turnover. Okay, I'll buy that. Yeah, Harrison says, love the trees in the background, guys. Almost looks like a movie set. Well, it kind of is a movie set.
Yeah.
We're making a movie now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
We're going to save that. Yeah, ooh, Friday the 13th.
With Chris Arthur here, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I see Jennifer and Chase they've got a fire going out there with Brett Feldy, so they got a fire pit going out there. We're going to get there they are. They're waving at you. Can you see them? I know you can't. The phone's wrong. So here we go. Talking more about bass. Here's the way largemouth bass work with a hatchery. So what the hatchery does is they bring their brood fish in. You know, they don't want them spawning before a certain time because they have so many ponds. You know, they have so much water, and they want to try to get the bass all started on an even keel as much as they can. So they'll bring their brood fish in, put them on well water, feed them in tanks, and then when they see that the females are pretty mature and ready to go, you know, their eggs are getting viable, then they'll pair them off. And the best hatcheries, actually, all those fish are pit tagged. So they know the origin of the females, they know the origin of the males, and like an American Sportfish hatchery, for example, they'll take a known male with known females and they'll spawn those, and they'll oftentimes do that in a controlled environment in a tank, and then take the eggs and go hatch them in a pond, you know, or they'll hatch them there and then take the little bitty fry and move them to a highly fertilized pond. So they don't want spawns of fish that are 3 or 4 days apart because they cannibalize each other. So they try to do the timing thing based on temperature and photo period when everything's right so that they can get a crop, because they're after a crop. That's what they want. So the more fish they can raise per unit of water, the more profitable it is. So they try to get their timing down. So it's not like nature comes in and says, okay, it's time to have babies, let's spawn, and here we go. It's a little bit more controlled on the hatcheries like that. So then they got to have enough time to grow. So what they do is those fish are plankton feeders until they get to be right at 2 inches long. Then when they hit 2 inches, which is about 6 weeks after they're hatched, that's when they get cannibalistic. That's when a couple of them in the industry, we call them jumpers, the more aggressive, faster growing ones are going to start eating their brothers and sisters and cousins and all that. So they bring them in at that point and begin to feed train them. And they'll feed train them and get them up to 2.5 to 3 inches long, and then they start selling them. Now, they do sell a bunch of fish before they do the feed training program. They don't feed train all of them. They don't have space to do that. So you can buy them either non-feed trained at about 2.5 inches long, or you can wait another 3 or 4 weeks and get pushing into June. Then you can buy some that are really plump and they know how to feed, and you know, out in the wild. And so the best time to get young of the year fish. So if you're buying bass in March, they're typically last year's fish. So they're going to be 5 or 6 inches long when they should be 8 to 10 inches long after that span of time, which they would have been if they'd been in your pond for a year. So there's the advice on that. Billy Bates says, there is a company, I won't say the name, but they claim that many of the artificial trees and cover that is commonly sold and or imitated by homemade structure makers are not effective. They base this on anecdotal information, observations through the underwater photography, and what they're seeing the fish use. What's the actual key to successful artificial structures that fish will actually use? Okay, I'm going to read that again. Bob, there's a company, I won't say the name, an unnamed company, but they claim that many of the artificial trees and cover that are commonly sold or imitated by homemade structure makers are not effective. They base this on anecdotal observations through underwater photography and what they're seeing the fish use. What's the actual key to a successful artificial structures that fish will... Okay, I'll tell you what. Here's what I've seen, and actually, I'm just getting ready to write an article that's going to go into the March-April issue of Palm Moss Magazine about that topic. And I've collected my data. I've got, actually, South Dakota State University did some really strong research that shows, and I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version. To answer your question, you need to have mass that covers... Oh, I got a goblet with wine in it. Are y'all drinking from brass goblets with red wine?
I am.
Cheers.
No, he didn't give me one.
Oh.
I think he's
You
got
wanted
one
a-
left.
you wanted a
You wanted a red solo
red
cup,
Solo
dude.
cup, that's what you
Shut
got.
up. So the way that works is the more of the vertical water column that you can cover with mass. So picture this artificial structure in 10 feet of water that is 7 feet tall and covers an area as big as a pickup truck. If you can do that, then what's going to happen is that is attractive to several things because and depending on what kind of substrate that they choose, whether like if it's PVC pipe or like what Mossback does or what American Fish Tree does or some of the other ones, you got to have the right kind of substrate that will allow periphyton and algae and bacterial columns or communities to begin to grow on them. So what happens then is that stuff grows on that structure that attracts insects, which attracts small fish, which attracts bigger fish. So basically what you've done is just imagine, let's just talk about Christmas trees because everybody knows about that. Let's take 10 Christmas trees, put each one in a 5-gallon bucket with some concrete where it can stand up. If you take that Christmas tree and lay it on its side, within 2 years it's going to be collapsed and sunk in the mud and non-functional. But if you stand it up, it's going to last longer. So just picture in your mind artificial Christmas trees or some of the products that are on the market. And what happens is as they're standing up and they're covering an area as big as a pickup truck, now you've created pretty much an underwater community that is virtually utilizing the whole water column to give it the opportunity to grow food on it, which is going to attract fish. And in ponds that don't have a lot of habitat, it's like a magnet. I have run my electrofishing boat when I had one over the tops of these trees and some of this artificial structure like mossbacks and hit them, and they'll be looks like popcorn with all the little bait fish that pop up out of them. Well, what the research has shown is that as long as a pond has got somewhere between 18 and 25% coverage of the bottom of the pond with structure and community form, which means diversity, then you're going to increase the lake's ability to produce fish. If you have less than that, you're not necessarily going to produce more fish, but what you will do is attract more fish to where you can find them and catch them. So there you go. Pitch me something.
I think the most important structure, whether it's artificial structure or natural structure, is the structure for your fry and your fingerling bluegill, your forage. The structure that should be placed in anywhere from 1 foot to 4 foot of water, and a lot of people miss that.
Yes.
They just go straight to the bass structure.
That's a real good point.
I'm not worried about the bass structure. I'm worried about the bluegill structure. How do we protect our bluegill?
And why is that?
Because that's the food chain for the bass.
And how much does it take?
10 pounds of forage for a bass to gain a pound.
Man,
And
this
if you
guy's
do
got
not-
it going on.
If you do not protect your bluegill,
Yep.
then you're done.
When you say done, what does that mean?
Well, the bass going out. They're going to eat the bluegill. They're going to demolish the food chain. So you have to protect. You have to get the bluegill to 3 inches, and you have to protect them. I think I know which fish artificial company has mentioned whatever. Who was saying this? The comment?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
We don't.
Right. I'm not going to say. But
I don't talk politics or get in games like
But
that.
I've heard this before, but it's the structure, and it's tight. The Christmas trees do disintegrate, but if that's all you have,
Yes.
then use it.
Well, I'm using that as an example. So what you're looking for there is density.
Right.
So what Ron's talking about is part of the game using fish structure is to try to give a safe harbor of dense structure for bait fish, because the bait fish are the backbone of what's going to make the lake work well or not. All right, so then let's see. Look at there. There's Drew Hay. He's hanging out over in Savannah, Georgia at the
Spoke to Drew
SLMP
Hay
meeting.
today.
Yeah, did you?
Yep.
And he wishes he was at the Cabon.
Come on, Drew.
Yep, well, we're hanging out. Chico's using a Longhorn cup. Well, being an Aggie, I won't hold that against you, but I won't slap it out of your hand when I see you either, buddy. Let's see. I see Matt Mars did not me, but I had surface area and columns. Surface area and columns of shade. That's a good thing as well. Jimmy Dean, what's the best way to get rid of armored catfish in my pond without harming the other fish? Frost-proof Florida. Woo! That's a dilemma because those armored catfish bury up in the mud, and so Tim Stewart, our buddy there, you might friend Tim Stewart on Facebook. Sometimes he'll watch this show, but let's see here. What's the best way to get rid of armored catfish in my pond without harming other fish? I got channel cat, shell crackers, bluegill, speckled perch, bass, Nile perch. I like Pond Boss. Thanks for sharing. You bet. You're welcome for that. They will eat fish food, and you can trap them, but so will channel cats, and so will bluegills, and so will tilapia, what you're calling Nile perch. They will also eat fish food. But I don't know of an effective way. I mean, even Tim Stewart drained his pond, pumped it out, let the mud sit, and still had armored catfish living in the muck. So I don't know of an efficient way to get rid of them, but what I do know is once you get some bass up around 3 or 4 pounds, they'll eat those things. But if they're dominating the here's my answer. If they're dominating the population, try to trap as many as you can. And just expect that you're not going to get rid of them. If they're not dominating the pond and your other fish are growing at a good rate, don't worry about it. Because you can't do anything about it anyway except try to trap them. So, there's my answer. Can you believe it's almost 7 o'clock already?
Is it?
Dude, this just flies by, This totally flies by. Let's take a minute and do a commercial. Hey, you know what? Pond Boss Magazine. I don't like to hawk things, but I'm going to hawk this. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. And I know that I know Aguillard spent more than $40 on Boudin.
Oh, he did.
He did. Yep.
He did.
And your dad with his
Yep.
crawfish or shrimp etouffee and his crawfish bread.
More than $40 worth of Boudin.
Yeah, and we've tapped into the wine, so
Yep.
$35 a year, and you're going to get some really good nuggets out of each issue. I promise you that. I hear that from every subscriber. Chris Arthur's back there nodding his head, saying, "Yeah, he agrees with that." And it's really $35. That's not much. I'll tell you what. Do this. If you will subscribe to Pond Boss in the next 5 days, online or call the office and tell Leanne, then I'll throw in a fish poster for free. And those fish posters are like worth $7. So how you gonna beat a deal like that?
Not a bachelor poster.
No. Sunfish poster. Not a what? Bachelor poster?
Well, you watched The Bachelor.
Nah, shut up. My wife likes The Bachelor. I called him Monday working on this deal. We're going to be shocking the lake tomorrow with Robbie Mays from American Sportfish Hatchery come down. We're going to electrofish a lake and look at the fish and ask him what he was doing. He said he was watching The Bachelor.
Me?
That's what she said.
Miss Debbie, come on now.
Debbie always watches The Bachelor, and she thinks I like to do it with her. I just like to be with her.
She do it with her.
She does make me do it. Mark Dyer says, Pond Boss Magazine, cheaper than a COVID test.
Yeah.
That's it. Tory Rhodes, best issue ever. Hey, man, I appreciate that. We do have some really good topics in the January, February issue. And people are just now getting it. We mailed it December the 23rd, and it's just now hitting mailboxes. The post office, I don't know how many private companies could do what they did. They raised their prices and then told you that they were going to decrease their service. So I guess we're going to start mailing it 2 months early to try to get it on time. We'll see. Mike Cook got his magazines yesterday. That's great. But also I want to say thank you to Purina Mills because they're a constant in my life. They're a sponsor of this show. They advertise in Pond Boss, and I totally believe in Purina Mills. I believe in their Aquamax products because I've seen them work. I've seen the fish they grow in a variety of environments, everywhere from North Carolina to Texas to Nebraska to upstate New York even, where people feed fish sometimes in upstate New York. It's not a common practice, but they grow some pretty big bluegill up there. Also, thanks to Texas Hunter Products. I got to pop in and see those guys the other day.
Did you? Oh.
Yeah, I got to. My son wanted me to come and babysit the kids, those little Lusk
They're
boys.
great. We've even started ordering some deer products from them, and customer service over there is excellent.
When you call them in order, how long does it take to get
A
it?
couple days. Really.
Yeah, because they send it out that day.
A couple days. Yeah.
So their products aren't cheap,
They're the
but
best,
you get
though.
what you pay for. And if there's ever an issue, you call them and they'll fix it. We popped in. My son Jonathan is starting a pretty cool idea. He's got a he's working on creating an app that's kind of like it's almost like brokering hunting trips. You might compare it to like VRBO or Airbnb, where he's trying to figure out how he can take hunters and match them up with ranches that are underutilized that need harvest and things like that. So we popped into Texas Hunter on our way through San Antonio the other day and got to spend time with Chris and Dale and Cody, and Paul Sides was even there. So we got to talk to the guy that started the whole thing as well. So we love Texas Hunter as well. Frank James, Aquamax MVP, bluegill, copper-nosed bluegill, hybrid striped bass, rainbow trout, and tilapia. Man, I got all those little acronyms. Look at all those little abbreviations. I got them all right. Can't believe it.
I don't have my glass. I can't see.
I just read it to you.
Okay. I wasn't paying it. I was looking at Chase.
Chase is sneaking in the door with something,
Yeah.
trying not to make noise and distract us.
That's right.
All right, so Chris Arthur, what you wanted to talk about bass? What else did you have? Other questions? Everybody else bailed out, went to the fire. I'm gonna scroll back here and see. I don't want to put you on the spot, put
Lime.
pressure on you. Oh yeah. Yeah, we talked about lime last week, but what's your source? Where are you buying your lime?
It'd be from from Apex. It's here in Lacassine, right down the road.
Okay, and so how does it come? Does it come like in bags?
No, trucks.
Oh,
you
okay.
can bring your own bags and they can load it, but it's a lot easier just to order it by the truck.
Okay, so how much is it? Like if you buy a ton of it, how much is
It's
it?
$30 a ton plus the truck, the delivery.
Okay, so $30 a ton plus mileage, whatever it is,
Right.
and is it a spreader truck where they'll back up
No,
to the pond?
it's just a dump truck.
Okay, so they're going to dump it, and you got to spread it.
Well, we hadn't discussed that yet, but I don't have a lime barge. Can I borrow yours?
Sure, if I had one, I'd loan it to you.
No, the best way to do is from a barge.
Okay.
Or, they have it's a 7 or 8 acre neighborhood pond, so it's going to take quite a bit.
So, kind of give people an idea how much surface area a ton of lime covers. If you got a 50-gallon barrel, how many barrels will that fill up to be a ton?
Nah, I haven't.
4?
Well,
4 or 5. I mean, maybe 6.
yeah.
Because that stuff's pretty dense.
Yeah,
It's pretty heavy. So the volume of it's not a whole lot, just the way it is. But the standard recommendation for ponds with a pH down to 5.0 is to start off with a ton per acre. And sometimes if you're paying $30 a ton, sometimes the supplier will have a spreader truck where they can back up to the edge of the pond and open up and spread a bunch of it out, just spray it out, and then move to another spot and do it again. The commercial guys, they'll have it piled up right beside the pond where a pontoon boat can pull up. Then they load it with a front end loader and then take a pump, drive out in the lake, and then wash it off with the pump. That's how they do it. All right, so Harrison Davis agrees with Ron. My hunch is you can't get the structure close enough to shore. There you go. And to kind of, I hear where you're going. Go ahead.
And that's so when we're talking about a pond that is you hit water, you're on the water table, and that water table is fluctuating, and you set structure in specific areas for bluegill spawning and trying to protect these bluegill. If that pond, if it fluctuates, if it drops down below your structure, then you've lost that.
Yeah, well, then what's the point?
So I think that's just, I think and I talked to Drew Hay, and it's every 2 foot of water is a pound of pressure. So this guy he's
More than that.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
So he's at 20 feet. So how much pressure is that on top of the
lot,
water table?
a lot.
So the water table has no pressure. So what people have to realize is that head pressure is going to push that level down.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
it changes a lot.
That's right. That's right. There's Christy Berg checking in from Kansas. Now, a while ago when I was giving that description about the Christmas trees, I said to take 7-foot tall Christmas trees, or that's what I meant to say, put them in 10 feet of water. That way they're 3 feet from the surface. Now, the reason I think like that is that safety. I don't want some kid in a boat or a kayak bumping into a tree and getting knocked out of the kayak. Plus, most ponds fluctuate a foot to 2 feet through the course of a year. So if you've got some of that stuff, and I agree with what Harrison's saying, and I agree with what Ron's saying, because those bluegill, their nature is to escape being eaten. Now, this is an interesting story that'll take a little time. I was working on a lake in Arkansas years ago, and this was a lake where they'd had a bass die off, but the bluegill didn't die. So I took the electrofishing boat over there, and everywhere we went in that lake, I didn't care. It didn't matter if there was structure, open water. We were shocking up bluegills, 5 or 6 different size classes of bluegills everywhere. They were in the middle of the lake. Now, this lake was an old rice reservoir, so it wasn't deep. It wasn't more than 15 feet deep anywhere, and they created a bunch of underwater ridges. So everywhere we went, there were bluegill. But when they reestablished the bass, those bluegill weren't there anymore. They adjusted their behavior based on what was chasing them. So when Harrison and Ron are talking about having stuff close to the shore, it's bluegill's nature, or baitfish's nature, to try to get away and not get eaten. And the best place they can go is shallow, because they know the bass is probably not going to come up there and stay there all the time. They'll come up and flush and chase and, hit a bait fish anytime they can when they see the opportunity, but they're not going to live there. So it is important to cover some of that shallow water. Now, something else I've learned, though, is if we had, say, like the equivalent of 15 Christmas trees spread 3 feet apart, standing up straight, and 7, 8, 10 feet of water in an area as big as a pickup truck, off the shore 15 or 20 feet, they're still going to be packed up with bluegills, because bluegills can get there, and bass can't get in that dense cover, dense structure, to eat them. Ryan Triple, are there any negatives to under-aerating, for lack of a better term, a pond using a half-acre sump pump on an 8-acre pond? Absolutely, yes, there are. Hey, there's Vito checking in from Whitesburg. Good to see Vito. Vito Barnes, our good long-time friend. I've known Vito since he was in about probably 8th or 9th grade. Tell you how old I am. He's starting to get gray-headed.
You're getting there too, Bob.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I am. So, are there any negatives to under-aerating? Yes, there are. Do you know that?
Yes, sir.
You want to hit that topic?
Well, you're mixing anoxic water, and it's going to spread throughout the entire pond if you don't mix it well enough.
So if you can't mix it as fast as it's losing oxygen, then you're going to spread toxic water through part of the water column where that would not be if you didn't aerate at all. So if you were going to under-aerate an 8-acre pond, I would under-aerate in water 6 feet deep or less in the upper end and avoid the deepest part, because what aeration does is it creates vertical currents. Now, I'm talking about bottom diffused aeration, which I presume that's what you're talking about or your question is about. So if we've got bubble plumes cascading through the water column, it's not adding air to the water. What it's doing is it's taking the water and shoving it up. So it's pushing that water up so that it can mix with the atmosphere and communicate with the air to release its gases and absorb more gases like oxygen. So that's what aeration does. So if you underdo it, you're actually pushing dead toxic anoxic water up with the good healthy water column on top of the thermocline, and that can cause a problem. That can cause stressors. It may not cause a fish kill, but what it can do is it can create stressors where the water's not happy. Happy water. You got to have happy water. Chris likes that. Happy water. So, under aerating, my advice is if you're going to under aerate, just don't aerate. Go ahead and save a few bucks and get an aerator that works for that entire pond. But if you're going to insist on it, move it up shallow in the neck or up somewhere in a cove to where it's going to do least damage to the main body of the lake. Okay, look at there, 55. Drew Hayes done some math for us. A 55-gallon drum is real close to 9 cubic feet at approximately 95 pounds per cubic foot, 855 pounds.
I've had too much wine.
Oh, my gosh.
Drew. And natural light.
All right, so he's saying 855 pounds in a 55-gallon drum. So 4 drums, if it's wet.
See?
He says I'm being a nerd. So 4 55-gallon barrels is about a ton of lime. No, wait, yeah. No, that's not right. It'd be 2. Be 2 barrels. 2 55-gallon barrels would be a ton. So there's a kind of a picture of the volume. I'm thinking about lime that's more fluffy, but what he's talking about is lime that's mined and crushed and wet.
Right.
You know, so I get it. I get it. I guess Drew must be bored. He's watching us instead of hanging out with all the big dogs down there at Society of Lake Management Professionals.
I bug Drew all the time.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
You and Drew have gotten to be pretty good buddies.
Yep.
That's good. That's fun what this Pond Boss thing does.
Well, yeah, he's one of the top guys in the country, dirt guys. What he says,
you buy into it?
I believe it.
He's pretty passionate
works
about
with you
this
and
stuff.
Mike Otto, so he's got to be good.
Yep, Drew Hayes, rock solid. Anybody building a lake out there, tap into Drew Hayes in Pennsylvania, but he will travel because I think right now, I don't know if you can carve through an iceberg or not up there in Pennsylvania.
He
so
can come down here.
He can travel down here and do some work. There you go. Frank James, my experience in the acidic, infertile pond is that it's better to overlime every few years than just to do standard every year. That's good advice.
I agree.
That's real good advice. All right, here we are, 7:10. What other topics we got? What do you want to talk about? Hit me with something.
Planning upon planning.
Planting.
Planning.
Oh, okay. Okay. Getting ready to build upon.
Right. What thought goes into planning? Bottom structure, bottom anatomy.
Okay.
Water quality. A lot of people, they don't understand that these fish have to have level changes, different depths, not just a bowl of an empty pond. It's not going to work. I hear people say all the time, I never thought there was that much to it. Just dig a hole and put fish in it. That's not the case. There's so much that goes into it, and you have to think about that. You can't just think that what's right and just do it if you don't really know. Find somebody who does know. With the dirt work, the dam, the core trench, if you're digging a large body of water that's dammed up, there's got to be a core trench, and it's got to be done right, or you're going to have problems. I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm. I do too. Actually, I'm probably right. The way my world is morphed in the last couple of years, I'm doing way more habitat design, which is my favorite thing to do. I love to do that. And I counted them today, I've got 18 projects in different stages.
Really? Wow.
Everything from pre-planning to waiting on doing rain dances to get water in there to put fish in it.
Right.
And I cannot, and I'm with Ron, we cannot emphasize enough how much planning needs to be done in advance, way before that big yellow machine with the silver blade shows up. You need to know the site. You need to understand elevations. You got to make sure the watershed suits it. It's big enough to support it. You got to make sure you got the right kind of dirt. Not all dirt holds water. If you don't believe me, get a bucket of sand and pour water in it and see what happens. And so you got to learn all those things. And then, why are you building the pond? That's one of the questions I asked. I asked that. I went and looked at one at a site last Wednesday before I did this show. And I was visiting with that fella and talking to him, and I said, why'd you buy this place? He said, well, because I want to use it for my family. It's going to be a legacy property. I'm hoping I get buried here. And then it gets passed on to my kids, and they can enjoy it. And I want to build a lake that I can entertain people. He said, I honestly don't care if I ever catch a fish or not, but I want my friends and family, colleagues, and clients to be able to catch fish and have fun with it.
So what's it going to be like in 10 years?
Exactly.
What's your vision of this place in 20 years and 30 years?
Exactly.
A lot can change.
Exactly.
A lot can, and have different options, because a lot can change from the time you start digging, and then that dirt guy hits something and says, oh, we have a problem.
Yes.
Maybe have some different options of what you can do.
It's something I tell people is what you're doing really does deserve careful thought, because the minute those machines fire up and they start knocking down trees and moving dirt, you're changing that whole environment for at least 5 generations past you. And when I say that to somebody, you can see the pause that comes over them. They stop. They want to think about that and absorb what that means. Then I'll let it sit a minute, and I'll say, now, let me ask you this. Can you name very many of your great-grandparents and tell me what they did for a living? And most of us can't. We can't. But I know that when this guy I met last Wednesday, when his great-great-grandchildren see what he did, they're going to know this guy gave this some thought. You know, because he's going to create the best dam with the best soils, with the best habitat based on his goals, and he understands longevity of habitat. The number one killer of fishing lakes in the United States is age. You know, one of the big trends now is how to replace habitat that's degraded in public reservoirs that were built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even some in the 80s, where the habitat is degraded. You know, because each lake is going to become what it's destined to be based on the habitat that it's got. And when you think about that, whatever habitat is there that those fish can thrive in, then they will. You know what that means is, like in a small pond or a lake that doesn't have a lot of cover, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of dinky bass that are 10 to 12 inches long, and you can't money whip that. You can't, because they're thriving and because of the kind of habitat that they've got, presuming they've got happy water. David Schneiderman says, windmill aeration with 2 diffusers in 12 to 14 feet of water in a 3-acre pond. Enough aeration if the wind blows most of the time? Yes, it would be, because basically where you are, David's in southern Oklahoma, just north of Lake Texoma, and with a windmill aeration system there in a 3-acre pond, the wind's going to blow enough to mitigate your thermocline. And that being the case, it doesn't have to blow 24/7. Now, if it doesn't blow for a week or 10 days, then you're going to have a thermocline. And it would be a fun experiment for you when you're out there and you're out in your little paddle boat. You know, check the temperature of the water and see if you've got a thermocline. If your water temperature is autonomous through the summer, if it's the same 2/3 of the way down as it is at the surface, you're good to go. Would it be better to turn it off in cold weather? You know, if there's another freeze like we had and you had last year in February, yeah, it's better to turn it off. But in a normal winter in southern Oklahoma with a windmill aeration system, and I'm speaking carefully with this stuff, I'm not talking about, you know, a compressor, bottom of fuse, electric powered, etc. I'm saying that I don't think it matter. I don't think it would be make any difference to turn it off. I don't think that would matter. All right, Danny Mack. Danny Mack has got a cool place down in San Antonio. I haven't been there, but I've seen the videos and pictures that he puts up. But he's got it where he can pump water and run it down a waterfall over a cobblestone Colorado River Rock type stream, and then go into the pond that has got all kinds of cool features in it. And he's got all these different kinds of pumps and aeration systems and how he feeds his fish and all that. He says he's going to have to write an operating manual someday for whoever takes this place over. So you better get on that now and don't write it in code, which I know you want to. Mark Hicks, when digging a new pond and waiting for the pond to fill, do you recommend planting a grass in the pond bed to help with water clarity as it fills? If so, what type of grass do you suggest? I'm not opposed to that, but I don't necessarily think that you need it. Because the grass you're going to plant is going to be terrestrial, and it's going to break down. It's going to die and break down at some point. Then you're going to have the same soils that you would have had without it. You know, the difference is if it's destined to be muddy, it'll just put it off for a while. You know, but I'm not opposed to it either. You know, especially if you think it's going to take a while for that pond to fill up with water, I'm not opposed to whatever kind of depending on where you are, Mark. You know, if you're in the South, you can use Bermuda grass. If you're in the Midwest, you can use fescue or a rye or something like that if you want to. Now, one thing that happens if a pond doesn't fill up quickly, something's going to grow in the bottom of it no matter what. I worked on a project this last year where they drained it in June, and they were trying to dig silt out of this giant lake, and it turned into a major chore. And they did a pretty good job of it, but while they did it, willow trees started growing up and where water used to be 2 feet deep. And then when the lake started to fill back up, they had a bunch of 6-foot tall willow trees in 2 feet of water, and they were debating on whether or not they needed to go kill it, you know, or go cut them down, or what they needed to do with all those willow trees, because they're not going to die fast because they're going to be in 2 feet of water when the lake's full. So that's my take on that. So why don't we talk a little bit about fish? I've got an article coming out in the next issue of Pond Boss where I'm talking about, I can't remember the name of the article, and usually when I write something, I don't remember what I wrote, but I did this a couple of days ago, so it's still pretty fresh. Oh, I know what it was. The question is can I have crappie in my 6-acre pond? Somebody asked me that question, and I'm hearing that more and more and more and more. So the standard answer that I give about crappie is you don't want crappie in water less than about 20 acres. And the reason is in waters where they thrive, especially in the south, they're going to be the first fish to reproduce each year. And they're unpredictable spawners. Like if you get back-to-back cold fronts once a week during the month of their spawn, they won't have any eggs at all. They'll just absorb them and not lay them, you know. And so if that's the case, then you don't know what your recruiting class is going to be like. And then throw in the fact that they're predator fish, limited by their mouth size, that tells you that they're going to be preying heavily on the bottom of the food chain. So if they spawn first, they're coming off the beds, beginning to grow as the other fish are going to the beds and having babies that are going to come off the beds that the crappie are going to eat a lot of. And I have seen lots and lots and lots of ponds over the years, over the decades, where the bluegill were 3 or 4 inches long, a little thicker than a postage stamp, and maybe 4 years old or 5 years old. I came across the lake one time where they were 7 years old, 4.5 inches long, and you could literally see through them. You could hold one up and look, and I could put my hand behind it, I could see my hand through that fish. You know, and nobody wants that. So now, with that said, in today's world, I'm not opposed to you trying crappie, especially in a small pond. If it doesn't work, you can change it. You know, you can stock some bigger fish. You know, back in the day, you couldn't buy big fish. Now you can buy big fish. You're going to pay for them. But if your crappie stunt, you get overcrowded, and they're challenging the food chain, turn them into the food chain.
Now, what are you talking about big fish?
How big a
fish is a big fish?
Depends on how big your crappie are. So if your crappie are 4 inches long, you can go out and buy some 2.5 to 3.5 pound bass, and they're going to turn around and eat them.
Can you buy a 5, 6, 7, 8 pound bass?
Yeah, if you know the right people, you can buy a 5, 6, 7 pound bass, and you're going to pay $30 to $50 a pound plus freight.
I know a guy.
So you can buy a 5 pound bass for $250. You know, so kind of put that in perspective. If you decide to eat it by candlelight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, so I'm less opposed to crappie in small waters now than I was 10 years ago, because we have other ways to deal with them. You can grow hybrid striped bass. They'll eat fish food. They'll grow up and they'll eat little crappie. You know, you can take crappie. One of the objections that I've had to crappie is being a predator fish, exclusively a predator fish. Let me qualify that a little bit. They're going to eat dragonfly nymphs. They're going to eat minnows. They're going to eat bugs they can catch, which are most of them if they're available. But they're meat eaters. So they're going to eat insects and small fish. And then when they reach their peak, you're going to have 30 to 40 pounds of them in an acre. So if that's 30 1-pound crappie, or 40 half-pound crappie, or 20 1.5 or 2-pound crappie, you know, how many fillets do you get out of that? Because if you got 40 pounds of crappie that you can actually harvest, which you typically don't harvest that many. You can harvest 20, 25 pounds per acre per year. If you got 20 pounds of crappie, you're going to end up with 40% of that is fillets. What's that number? It's like 8 pounds of fillets for a year's worth of growth in 1 acre. Is that worth it? You know, and I have yet to meet anybody that fishes for crappie because it's a sport fish. Everybody that wants crappie want to eat it. So, there you go. Mike McPherson is trying yellow perch in his half-acre, 25-foot deep Indiana pond, stock fathead minnows, and use tilapia to help with algae and provide forage fish. I also have a feeding program. Now see, and I've got an article about yellow perch coming out in the March-April issue as well. And, you know, and yellow perch, think of those like you think about crappie, because they're predator fish as well. And they're inconsistent spawners. If they got the right substrate and the temperature's right, and they spawn when it's 40 degrees, 40 to 55 to 45 to 55 degrees is when they spawn. And they lay their eggs in sticky ribbons and sheath, you know, and they like to stick to those Christmas trees that you put underwater last week or 2 weeks ago or a month ago. You know, And so I think you can, and another thing about yellow perch is you can actually feed train those. If you're consistent with feeding, if you want to do that, they'll come to that fish food. So I'm way, way more optimistic about yellow perch now than I was 10 years ago. But I still see them in a parallel thought process as I do crappie, with one big difference. You can grow way more pounds of yellow perch in an acre of water than you can crappie, because you can actually get them to eat fish food. And when you can do that, then you can grow more pounds because you can prop them up with fish food. So there you go. Thanks for sharing that, Mike McPherson. So we got about 5 minutes to go, and then we're done. So what? Anything else going on?
What about your book? When's your book coming out?
Oh, you know what? I can hear Chris Blood shaking his finger at me right now.
I'm tired of hearing about this book. I want to see it.
Well, I do too.
I want to read it.
Well, the book is just about finished at layout. We've got bids on it to print it, and we're probably a week or 10 days away from sending it to the printer. It's going to be called Beyond the Basics, Fundamentals of Pond Management. It's got a cool looking cover, and it's I think 140 pages long, give or take some, and some really good photography. So there's going to be some good photos in this one as well. And it's going to sell for $29.95, so $30. And I was kind of bragging to Debbie about it the other day, and I said, honey, what's it like sleeping with an author?
Yeah.
And she said, it's all right. What's it like selling everything you know for $30? Whoa, she put me in my place. So anyway, I'm glad you asked.
Well, you're telling everything you know
That-
free right here.
Yeah. Well, I know. Yeah, well, I do leave a little bit of premium content for the Institute of Higher Pondology
That's good stuff,
website.
That's great stuff.
Debbie just texted, I'm ready for my boy. She's oven preheated for cookies. She's back home in Granbury, and she's got 2 grandkids, and she's so excited she can't stand it. And I'm sure she forgot that I do a broadcast on Wednesday, so she just texted me. Yeah, there's Kenny Sanderson checking in, Snipe from the Pond Boss Forum. By the way, if you haven't spent much time on the forum, do that. I'm starting to spend more time on the forum. I've been away from it. You know, my life has been hectic, which I'll give you 35 excuses, but the bottom line is I'm back on the forum, spending more time answering questions on the forum. If I see a need to answer that question, because we got so many experts, and Kenny's one of them, that is more than gracious giving his answers on the forum. So go to pondboss.com, click on Ask the Boss Forum. That's a great resource for everybody. Wyatt says, glad you went with $30. You were talking about $20. Yes, I was, until I saw how much it was going to cost to print it and ship it. So now that I know what it's going to cost, it's easier to figure out a price. Frank James, is there better threadfin shad spawning material, straw or hay? Yeah, there's actually, I think in reality that's probably the best you can get. There are other things that are better, but straw or hay, especially coastal Bermuda hay, works really, really well for spawning substrate for threadfin shad. So Kenny Sanderson is thanking me for being on the forum. Hey, I'm glad to be there. You know, I do want to get the forum kicked back up and moving a little bit more, because it's a good resource for those demographics. There's a lot of folks that are more comfortable on the forum than they are to come watch something like on Facebook. You know, there's a lot of guys that just don't participate much in social media, and the forum is really, really good for that. There's Steve Thorburn checking in. He is Snipe. Yes, he is. That is Snipe. Drew Schmidt, I constantly have 3 or 4 forums open at a time. So many great minds out there. I love absorbing pond knowledge. We love to share that with you. So we're going to kind of wrap it up. Institute of Higher Pondology, if you will go to pondboss.teachable.com, then you'll find it. Now you got to pay for that. It's I think 26 videos for all the different. Have you been through it? You've been going through some of it.
I have some.
Some of it.
Yeah,
But
you need to do another.
I need to promote it more.
Well, no, we need to have a hands-on class. Like
Oh, okay.
but yes, but if the
well, now that we're
online version is great too.
now that we're getting settled in, we will have another face-to-face
Without a doubt.
pondology course, and we're going to do it in Granbury. I just got to work out the logistics and all that. When I get that done, I will iron that out. So in the meantime, spend time here, spend time on the forum. We've got a store which got a number of books that are really good. And Ron, thanks for hosting this, man.
Oh,
I'm ready to go eat a little bit more Cajun food.
come on.
We got boudin, we got boudin balls, we got the crawfish cornbread, which is to die for. That recipe is going to be in Pond Boss. Watch the video underneath this one, you'll see it. All right, there goes Drew Hayes saying great job. Drew would come to a Pondology, I know he would.
Oh, yeah.
Harrison Davis, you're welcome. Frank James, you're welcome. We appreciate it. Thank you. So now at 7:30, we're going to tune out and go drink a little bit of wine, sit around the fire, and talk pond business. So thanks again for hosting us, man.
Thank you for being here.
All right, and guys, appreciate the audience tonight. So adios till next week.